All right, everybody, this is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over the survivor pool analysis for week 6. And I'm a little bit tilted, and I'm going to tell you why. So I did mention at the beginning of the year that COVID was going to impact the way that survivor pools were going to be played out. Um, what I didn't expect was cancellation of games would then create a complete reshuffling of the schedules. And that happened after this past week, and that, I would say, severely impacted the strength of some of my entries. And it kind of, I don't want to say punished, but it didn't allow us to leverage some plays in the way that we envisioned at the beginning of the year. For example, we mentioned that we were going to be fading Indianapolis a few weeks ago when everybody was on them, with the idea that this week we would be able to use them with very, very few other options. Okay. And then the idea would be, we could use them. Everybody else would have burned LAC, who was going to be playing the Jets this week. Right. So then what we were able to do is get rid of all those LAC people so that in week 8, we could go ahead and take LAC against the Jets, actually, in week 8. But what ended up happening, unfortunately, was that they changed everything around such that they allowed that they moved Miami to this week, giving everybody an option if they burned Indianapolis. And then likewise, they removed LAC from week 8. So it gave everybody who, were kind of suckers and played Indianapolis a few weeks ago kind of a free out. Not a free out, but really it reduced their punishment, so to speak. But again, that's, I guess, I wouldn't say part of the variance to expect. That was not part that I expected. In any case, we had a very, very strong week from a planning perspective. As you might recall, I did recommend to get off of all the chalk popular plays and play Houston. And I went through an entire dissertation about why we're planning to use all those other teams for the future. And if we could just get past Houston last week, we would gain a lot of equity, and we did. Now, it would have been nice if Dallas and the Seattles and those other chalky teams lost last week. We did get some losses out of Kansas City. Kansas City lost, so that took some people out. San Francisco lost, so it took some people out. But even though Dallas and Seattle didn't lose, people who burned them, they're gonna get punished down the road. Okay, and also, by the way, the Dallas people also got a little lucky in that they were able to, they burned Dallas and didn't save them for maybe week 10 or 12, where they were going to be a much stronger favorite. And unfortunately, Dak Prescott went down pretty much for the year, so they're not going to be as big of a favorite in week 12. So let's just say the fish got very lucky this past week. But we press on. The other thing, by the way, it really is the week for the fish, because New England was postponed to this week, yet putting another decent option for those of you that faded Indianapolis. So yeah, we got a little unlucky with the scheduling gods, but we move on. So this week, again, we review what's important. You want to get teams with good immediate EV, which means a combination of good win odds and also being low owned, because you have two equally likely teams to win. And one of them is higher owned. You want to get leverage against them by playing the other team, right? And the other thing is that you want to pick teams that you're not going to want to use in the future. And as I mentioned last week, it's now time. It's always time, but it's now time to get it rolling. Let me pause for a second. All right, so we're really planning. Sorry about that. On the future, and we spent a lot of time last week discussing where we were going to be planning and what we were going to be trying to accomplish down the road. And we're going to continue doing a lot of that this week. So we're going to be talking about individual plays and also the logic behind them with respect to the future. So again, we're going to first rank these teams by immediate EV. Now, again, if you use Survivor Grid for your ownership percentages, just remember that there are 3 different types of pool ways you can list it. One is from the Run Your Pool app. That's one place that they do a lot of Survivor pools. Another is from Office Football Pool, where they run a lot, or you could average them. Depending on where you're at, you could just pick either one. I like to use a mixture of Office Football Pool and average. So we're going to rank these already by EV, and they do that for you, right? They'll tell you, they'll factor in win percentage and popularity and tell you what the best IEV play is. So again, from the top, Baltimore is the highest EV, but, we're not going to play them because they have just incredible amount of future value. We're going to want to play them either in 11 or in 13 or in 15 or in 16. So we're not going to play them. The clear play, honestly, still remains Indianapolis. Right? They are the second highest immediate EV. They have very, very low amount of future value. The reason why, by the way, only 12% of people taking them is because everybody took them a few weeks ago. And just the scarcity of it just kind of makes this the case. And that's why, we knew this was going to be a good play this week. Down the list, New England's a good play if you have them. Now, if you followed my advice, you probably burned them already. So it's unlikely that you're going to have New England available. But New England is probably the second best overall play. Their immediate EV is a little, I would say significantly lower than Indianapolis. And they do have some future value, specifically week 9. Like you look at week 9, if you don't want to burn Kansas City, for example, New England becomes a very, very strong play. So you would like to save New England if you possibly could. So while New England's okay, I don't think they're nearly as good of a play as Indianapolis. Kansas City, just bad. EV is not very good, and also their future values through the roof. Pittsburgh, I'm not going to be taking Pittsburgh this week because even though their immediate EV is okay, I'm really going to need them in week 10 or 13. Like if you look at week 10, like if you've got to have either Green Bay or Pittsburgh, so I'm going to keep Pittsburgh available for that. And likewise 13, you want to have Kansas City and Pittsburgh available, so I want to hold Pittsburgh for those weeks. Rams are okay, only because they're going to be so low owned this week that makes their EV all right. But again, future values, I'm going to want them in 7, or I might want them in 12, or I might want them even more in 15. So Rams are not going to probably play them as well. So it looks as though Indianapolis is kind of clear. If you want like a couple of real galaxy brain plays, you could go down to Minnesota. But even Minnesota, you can make a case that you have some future value in, say, week 13. So maybe not even Minnesota. Detroit would be an interesting kind of galaxy brain play. Detroit, I think Detroit is probably actually a little bit better than Minnesota. You could use Detroit in 10, but I guess these are very similar. So Detroit and Minnesota I consider similar. So Indianapolis would be the first play, and then if you had multiple entries, maybe you want to try Detroit or Minnesota. If you didn't like any of that, you could go and play Carolina or somebody like that. But the one you're not supposed to play is Miami, right? So Miami is 45% owned in most pools, and you can see why, right? They're a 10-point favorite. They were lucky to get the schedule, and you can't use them ever again. So they have almost no future value, but the problem is they're so high owned that their EV is just awful. And you're really just essentially throwing money away by playing Miami this week. Can they win? Sure, of course. They're like 77% chance to win. But, in my experience playing Survivor, these are the spots that really show who the terrible players are. You really just cannot play Miami. It just goes against all Survivor pool etiquette. Let's put it that way. Now, yeah, of course you can get, if you don't play Miami, then you certainly root for the Jets. And if the Jets win, boy, that's incredible. You knock 50% of the pool out, and that's great. And keep in mind, 77% is not that much. It means that 23% of the time these guys are going to lose. So 23% of the time, 50% of the pool is gone. You want to leverage that if they're good options, and Indianapolis is a perfectly good option. So that's what I'm doing. Indianapolis, I'm going to be really heavily overweight on them. Maybe I'll flick into Detroit, maybe flick into Minnesota, but that's where I'm going. And again, for me, this is just classic survivor play theory. And yeah, hope you guys understood that. Hope you get it. Hope you're doing well in whatever you're doing. And that's it.